I didn't need a mic, did I? Good evening. I'm Councillor Malcolm Mackay, Chairman of the Licensing Committee. Welcome to the meeting this evening, all of you. And it's very nice to see the back rows pretty full up. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast live and recorded. If anybody else is intended to record, please let me know now. This is not to stop you, but to ensure that others are aware. Noted?
I shall reserve my right.
Thank you. If the fire alarm sounds, please remain seated and the Democratic Services team will assess and give further instructions on evacuation. I'd like to introduce Councillor Keeley as a new member of the committee. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. Apologies from Councillor Treblinski. Do we have any other apologies? I don't believe we have. Is that correct? No. Item 2, notification of substitute members. Are there any substitute members? We have Councillor Spooner for Treblinski. Is that correct?
Thank you. Yes, for Councillor Swinsky. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3, there are no urgent items, but there is an urgent update to item 15. Maidstone Borough Council Licensing Act 2003, Draft Statement of Licensing Policy 2026 to 2031, which has been circulated, and this was updated, the information on page 77. All right. We may proceed. Are there any visiting members? I don't see any. Item 5, are there any disclosures by members or officers? No. Item 6, disclosures of lobbying. I understand that some councillors may have been approached on item 13, request to amend Maidstone's Hackney carriage and private hire licensing policy. Councillor Nagy? Does this count as lobbying?
If no one's had an opportunity to read it, then it's up to you.
This will not be included as lobbying as we haven't had time to read it prior to, but as it is just, we're going to hear the contents of this in the committee. So just Councillor Nagy, yes? Thank you. Item 7, exempt items. I move that all items be taken in public. Is that agreed by the committee? Item 8. Minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of September, which Councillor Clive English chaired. Have I?
Minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of September is the next one.
Beg your pardon? Comments on accuracy of those minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of September. Any comments? If none, say, I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of September 2025 be approved as correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Now I'll come back to Item 9, minutes of the licensing subcommittee meeting held on the 22nd of September 2025. Comments on the accuracy of the minutes. Councillor English.
They appear to be correct, Mr. Chairman.
So is that agreed? Item 10, questions and answer session of local residents, if any. There are none. Item 11, questions from members to the chairman. There are none. Item 12, licensing fees and charges. The report will be introduced by Sharon Bamborough, Head of Licensing Partnership.
Thank you, Chairman. Before you is the report, which is detailing our annual review of fees and charges for licence applications. For most part, we are going with a 5% uplift, which is in line with the corporate. What we've been advised by the Head of Finance is the corporate uplift this year. Obviously, some of the fees in the tables are statutory, where we've reached the maximum. Obviously, we're not proposing to do an increase because we can't, and things like that. And in terms of the taxi application fees and charges, they need to go out to consultation. So that's why the recommendation is separated in terms of getting authority to go out for consultation on those. And then if there are any objections to those proposed changes, we would come back to the January meeting of the Licensing Committee for you to consider those representations and hear from anybody who wanted to speak on it, and then make a final decision on what those fees and charges would be just for the taxi licensing, because the rest don't need to go out to consultation. So happy to take any questions. The only thing I'm going to flag up is that since the publication of the report, it's come to my attention on the tables for fees and charges for taxis, where I'm quoting the DBS application fee. That's a fee set by the DBS, it's not set by us, it's just in there for information because it's, I hope, much easier for the trade to understand all the fees and charges. And it's come to my attention that the £13 that I've mentioned on the update service is now £16. So that will just get changed as and when we finalise the taxi fees and charges, but it's not something that you personally set, but it's just for information. So I thought I should flag that up. Happy to take any questions.
Yes?
I just want to apologise for being late.
No problem.
I've got nothing to declare. I haven't been lobbied, and apologies.
Any questions from the committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to welcome your welcome to the licensing committee, because I'm also a new member and you didn't mention me, but that's fine. I don't get offended.
Oh, I beg sorry, I do beg your pardon. You go to so many meetings, I just assumed you got the right one.
I've never been to a licensing committee before. On agenda 12 then, on page 23, I note on 5.2 that there is a risk about licensing service incurring a deficit. So I was wondering, over the past 5 years, if there's been any deficits within the licensing, and if so, of how much, please?
That's not information that we've got with us. If we'd got the question in advance, we could have potentially looked that up for you. But we can take that away as an action, just to provide that information if it's appropriate. I'll liaise with Lorraine and John about that, because it's very much about the budgeting for the service.
Okay, I was given a wide guess, and maybe there was a deficit over 2020. So we might need to review this. I was wondering whether the 5% increase was due to the deficit that was potentially double-digit in 2020, and we're trying to catch up on a deficit within that particular licensing budget.
I believe it's inflationary. It's not trying to catch up with anything. That's the impression I got from the Head of Finance.
Right. Thank you very much.
Would you like to comment further on the budget aspect of this?
Yeah, so just to give you some assurance, I meet with the Director of Finance on a quarterly basis, and we go through all the budgets, including licensing budgets, and I can give you an assurance there isn't any significant deficits in any one area, and the bottom line for the licensing area of activities is quite healthy. Thank you.
Councillor English.
Yeah, it does make it very clear in the report that this is essentially an inflationary guided uplift. And we operate within a very regulated environment in terms of the level of fees that we can set. Clearly, if we moved it up, the risk would be in the other direction, that we would then end up collecting too much revenue and then would have to reduce it in years to come. So it's better to try and aim in the middle, which is what we've consistently done. In any one year, there is always the slight risk that inflation may be lower or higher than one predicts, but generally speaking, we haven't had significant deficits or overshoots, not in the 30 odd years I can remember anyway. Before that, I wouldn't want to promise you, but that would have been pre-94, so probably not relevant to what we do now. I've looked at the report, and I think that it's a reasonable stab at what we need to set, given that there are always uncertainties about what the inflation outturn will be. So I'll move the recommendation.
Councillor David Nagy.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to say that licensing is a non-profit making organisation, and when we've had a surplus in the past, it's had to go somewhere because we're not allowed to make money. So all the costs are just to cover our costs, really, and this is just a standard thing that comes up.
Councillor Valspringer.
I'd just like to second the proposal that we accept the recommendations.
Is that agreed? We move to item 13, request to amend Maidstone's Hackney carriage and private hire licensing policy. Before the report is introduced, we have 4 public speakers. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the committee. Mrs. Jade Collier from Express Cabs. Welcome, and just so you're all aware, you will be timed.
Good evening, officers and councillors. Before I begin, I want to clarify why I'm referencing Tunbridge Wells when our concern is Maidstone. The reason is that Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells are part of the same licensing partnership, which means that decisions and interpretations of policy in one borough can directly affect the approach in the other. This makes it particularly important to understand how licensing policies are being applied across the partnership. It has come to our attention that Uber, the global app-based company, has been granted an operator's licence in Tunbridge Wells, but the Tunbridge Wells licensing policy could not be clearer. It states, an operator's licence will not be granted an operator whose premises are located outside the borough. Despite that clear wording, there appears to be no identifiable operating base or office address for Uber within Tunbridge Wells. And unlike all other licensed operators in both Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells, Uber's address is not publicly available. I've looked and there is nothing listed that the public can access. We also feel that neighbouring boroughs such as Tunbridge Wells, by issuing operator licences to Uber, have given the company wind in its sails. That decision will allow Uber to licence large numbers of vehicles under that authority, which can then operate freely in Maidstone and surrounding areas under the triple lock rule. So while Tunbridge Wells collects the licensing fees, the impact of those vehicles, the enforcement challenges, the congestion and the effect on local trade is felt right here in Maidstone. where this council has no direct regulatory control. That situation undermines the intention of local licensing and allows one authority's decision to directly affect the integrity of another's area. So, the obvious question is, how was that licence approved? And if an exception has been made, on what legal or policy basis was that decision taken? Local operators here in Maidstone are expected to follow the rules to the letter. They must have a local office, provide physical point of contact and remain open to inspection by licensing officers. If any one of them applied without premises in the borough, their application would be refused immediately. Yet somehow it seems that a global corporation may have been able to bypass that very same condition. This isn't just about fairness, it's also about public safety. We've already seen issues with cross-border in hiring, where drivers licensed elsewhere operate here without proper local oversight. When incidents or safety concerns arise at festivals, large public events, or during the nighttime economy, we rely on local operators and local licensing officers to know the area, know their drivers, and can respond immediately. That level of control simply isn't possible when vehicles are being dispatched by a remote operator with no local base or management presence. And let's not forget the economic side. Local operators employ local people. We invest in premises, vehicles and staff, and we contribute substantial licensing fees that support this very department and its enforcement work. If companies like Uber I would like to finish. I have missed quite a big section out of my speech. I apologise. My other people that are speaking have got shorter speeches, so I don't know if we would be allowed to continue.
Finish your sentence then, please.
If companies like Uber are allowed to operate here without the same local commitments, that contribution will disappear, along with the stability of local businesses that have served this community for years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dear councillors and members of the Licensing Committee, my name is Tom Veach and I run Apollo Taxis here in Maidstone. I'd like to begin by recognising the excellent work the council and licensing team have done in maintaining such high standards of safety and professionalism across Maidstone's taxi and private hire trade. Those standards are something we should all be proud of and something we must protect. But today I want to speak about something that risks undoing much of that progress. If global ride-hailing apps like Uber are granted licences in the borough, we must take a very close look at the policies that protect passengers, because the dangers that come with the systems are not hypothetical. They're real, documented, and already causing major issues in other towns and cities across the UK. My biggest concern is around drivers multi-apping. In a nutshell, this means working for multiple operators at the same time. On paper, it sounds harmless. Drivers are self-employed and they should be free to choose who they work for, and I completely agree with that. But when drivers are logged into 2 or 3 different apps at once, enforcement becomes almost impossible. The council and even the police won't know who a driver is working for at a time or on any given journey. If there's a complaint, a safeguarding issue, a serious incident, it can take hours, sometimes days, to trace who is responsible. And in those moments, every minute counts. This isn't speculation, it's already happening elsewhere. Councils across the country are raising the alarm. And if someone in Maidstone reports an issue and the driver happens to be switching between platforms, where do we even start? The operator, the council, the police, the accountability becomes blurred, and that's where the standards start to slip. Right now, Maidstone is known for having clear lines of responsibility. If there's a complaint about one of our drivers, you know exactly where to go, and you get answers. That's how it should be. But if multi-apping is allowed, unchecked, that clarity and that trust will vanish. So I'm asking the committee to consider one simple but vital rule, that every driver must declare to the council which operator they're working for at any given time, and that if that driver is found to be multi-apping, they should be brought before committee. This isn't about shutting the door on innovation, it's about keeping people safe, keeping accountability clear and ensuring every operator, local or global, plays by the same rules. It's not anti-Uber, it's pro-Maidstone. It's about protecting what we've all worked hard to build, a safe, trusted and respected transport network that the public can rely on. Thank you for your time and your continued efforts.
Mr. Ben Akers of Streamline.
Good evening, officers and councillors. Maidstone licensing policy rightly emphasises the importance of the fit and proper test, not just for operators, but for every licensed driver. These policies make it clear that the safety and confidence of the travelling public depending on operators and drivers who are locally accountable, traceable, and subject to robust checks and enforcement. So how can that principle possibly be upheld when an operator runs its business remotely, dispatching vehicles from outside the borough with no physical presence for officers to inspect or for the public to contact? At the same time, a driver can license a vehicle in Wolverhampton at a much lower cost through a faster process, often with lower safety and vehicle standards. Those drivers can then onboard with Uber and pick up passengers here in Maidstone. This is the same company that has previously had its operators' licences revoked in several UK cities, including London, Brighton, Sheffield, York and others, all for serious safety concerns. And let's be clear, when standards are weakened elsewhere, the impact is felt here. A loophole in one borough becomes a risk in another. If Maidstone allows operators to exploit these gaps, we undermine the very principles our policy is built on. Local accountability cannot be optional. It must be the foundation of public safety. Uber's business model poses a particular risk within the nighttime economy, especially to young female passengers who may be intoxicated or vulnerable. Local private hire operators here in Maidstone must follow strict safeguarding rules, but Uber drivers are often licensed many hundreds of miles away under different authorities with different standards. God forbid a woman were attacked or assaulted by an Uber driver here in Maidstone. It could take many hours, even days, for local police or licensing officers to identify that driver and confirm the licence details, because those records are held by a remote council, not by us. That delay can be critical. It can mean lost evidence, delayed justice, and even the risk of further harm. When a vulnerable passenger gets into a vehicle driven by someone who hasn't been vetted or trained under Maidstone's own safeguarding standards, the chain of accountability is broken, and that's exactly where these policies were designed to prevent. That raises an important question. Should there be a system similar to the NR3 register, which already allows councils to share information about driver refusals and revocations to also cover operator applications? That way, councils could identify companies with compliance or safety issues elsewhere before they undermine our borough's standards. Such a measure would strengthen our policy and ensure that no operator can bypass Maidstone's licensing rules or compromise public safety. Uber's safety issues are well documented. Uber's business model, with no local base, no visible management, and drivers licensed in other areas, make it difficult to see how it could meet the fit and proper standard we demand of every local operator. Because we can all agree the safety of the public must always be our greatest priority. We welcome fair competition, but not competition that erodes standards or disadvantages those who follow the rules.
Thank you, Mr. Akers. Mr. Jason Brown from Express Cabs.
Good evening, officers and councillors. From what we understand, Uber does not currently hold an operator's licence in Maidstone. If that's correct, then Uber is falsely advertising that they do, which misleads customers into believing they are booking a vehicle licensed with a Borough of Maidstone. We have provided screenshots for you to review and encourage you to take a moment to search Uber in Maidstone online. Unless Uber has indeed been granted a licence in this borough, this practice is highly misleading and the public undermines trust in our local licensing system. This issue goes beyond advertising. Uber recruitment model actively encourages drivers to license vehicles in Wolverhampton because of the lower cost, faster processing times. To put this into perspective, in early 25, data shows that nearly 50,000 private hire and taxi licences were granted in Wolverhampton, yet only 813 of those licence holders actually live in the borough. The intention behind licensing so many vehicles in one council when the business mainly operates elsewhere is not genuinely intended to serve passengers within that licensing area. This creates a situation where vehicles licensed hundreds of miles away are able to operate here in Maidstone, outside of the oversights of our local authority. It raises serious questions about passenger safety, accountability and fairness for local operators who follow the rules and pay the local fees. What does this matter? Public safety. Local licensing ensures vehicles meet our borough standards. When cars licensed elsewhere operate here, those safeguards are weakened. Fair competition. Local businesses are being undercut by operators exploiting loopholes. Transparency. Customers believe they are booking local licensed vehicles when in reality they are not. We believe Maidstone has the gold standard for licensing and safety, and we want to maintain that reputation. To ensure the safety of our customers and fairness to all operators, we propose the following. Global operators such as Uber must have a physical manned office within the borough to allow licensing officers to carry out inspections as required by policy. NR3 checks or equivalent should be carried out on all new operator licence applications to ensure the company is fit and proper. Checks must also be applied to new drivers and any operator application where an NR3 or equivalent reveals the previously revoked licence must not be granted an operator's licence. By enforcing clear rules, ensuring proper checks and holding all operators at the same level of accountability, we can safeguard passengers, support local businesses and uphold public trust. The question on everybody's lips here is, does Uber have an active or pending operator's licence in Maidstone? We are committed to working with you to achieve these goals. Together we can ensure that Maidstone remains a model of fairness, safety and professionalism in the private hire trade. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Brown. The report will be introduced by John Littlemore, Head of Housing and Regulatory Services.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to members from the private hire companies who've come to speak to you tonight. It's comforting to know that our operators in Maidstone hold themselves to such high standards, and public safety is an imperative importance to them. I think that's very useful to hear. In terms of the request that's made, Chair, as you'll know, our current policy is a policy that is adopted by the Council and goes through a consultation process before adoption. And we would only normally amend that policy if there was a statutory change, or it was at the end of the review period, or there had been a situation that warrants, a significant situation that warrants reconsideration. And members will recall when we had the COVID pandemic that the trade asked us to look at various matters, and we did so because that was a significant event that doesn't happen very often. So in terms of the request that has been received, you've heard from the operators, and there were 4 key points in the proposal that was put to officers in, I think it was in August, and that was around how offices that are requested by licensed operators should be located and how they should be staffed. So it's quite right that Chair and Vice Chair asked for a report on that matter so that you could listen to the discussion and have a debate about that and consider whether you ought to think about amending the policy. So that a report has been drafted, and as you'll see, there's a recommendation by the officers having considered all of those points. I think turning to some of the submissions that you've heard from the trade tonight, I think what we need to concern ourselves obviously is with Maidstone's policy. So we're not here to adjudicate on what happened or may not have happened in Tunbridge Wells, and as I have no knowledge of that, I'm not going to comment on that. And also we're not here to decide whether Wolverhampton is the benchmark standard or not, to which local authorities should attain. But clearly, we as a local authority are quite proud with our policy, and as we've heard from the trade, that's reflected in the standards they want to hold. What I can assure members with is that any application from any operator will be assessed robustly under our policy terms. So if it's a requirement of our policy that there's an office located in the borough, which it is, any application will be assessed on that, and there will be no exceptions for that. In terms of multi-app users, and also the issue of cross-border operation, I think it's a genuine concern that both officers and providers have had for some time. But that is a matter that needs to be dealt with at government level through primary legislation. It's not something that we can amend our policy to address, because it wouldn't be compliant with the overall legislation. So I hear the operator's concerns about that, but the proposals for the amendments that have been put forward would not address that, because that situation will still be able to occur. So looking at those, the proposals which are on page 28, those 4 bullet points there, what we've heard this evening, and as I said, very impassioned speeches from members of the trade, but they don't come to the point of addressing whether there is a shortfall in our current policy, or whether there is a situation that's occurred that we need to address by amending the policy. And I've not heard that or anything in the speeches to make me change the recommendation that was put to you in the report. So in looking at that, the request that was put to officers to amend the policy and the concerns that have been raised, quite rightly, we have to consider whether those amendments are reasonable and proportionate and would address those concerns. And upon reflection and having listened to speeches, as I say, I haven't heard anything that would mean that I would change the recommendation that's in the report, that at this point in time there's no significant or compelling reason why we need to amend our current policy to address safety concerns. As I say, it's a separate issue about whether we lobby government for change, which might be something that's considered, but in terms of amending our current policy, my advice to the committee is at this stage we don't need to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Littlemore. Councillor English.
I'll come to a second point about lobbying in a moment. The one thing I would like clarification on, because I've been noting up and down the country recently, but it's not just the issue about whether women and girls would be at risk, and that's a very important issue. But I've noticed a number of Uber drivers recently up and down the country, and it's so common that you do wonder whether it's company policy, have been refusing service to people with guide dogs. And there have been quite a lot of licences yanked as a result of that. But to yank a licence, you need to know where it was issued from and where the operator is operating from. Because if it's in the big city, then it's fairly obvious. But the one point I'd like clarification on is whether or not there is anything we can do about making sure that it's clear where these drivers are licensed. And I'll come back to the lobbying point in a minute.
I mean, generally speaking, they are specific complaints, and it's generally the person with the service dog that reports that to you, and they generally have taken that information from you can always identify the vehicle and driver and deal with them. It's very rare that they will say, there was a driver, I didn't get any details, I don't know who licensed them. They contact you because they know you've licensed them.
I asked because it was raised by the trade as a potential issue. Having had a reasonably satisfactory answer on that point, and also the point about the office, and I was quite pleased to hear Mr. Littlemore make quite such an unequivocal statement. That's quite reassuring. I do think that the fact that we have limited room for manoeuvre in our own policy does not necessarily equate to this council doing nothing. I do think that taxi licensing legislation has got itself in a bit of a mess and is being taken advantage of by a particular authority simply to make money, and it's putting better run authorities and better run companies at some risk. So I do think there is an issue whether this council should more broadly, not necessarily this committee, but this council should consider when making appropriate representations to the government. And I do think we should.
That is possibly quite outside the scope of this committee. Well, all right.
No, it's not.
Mr.
Littlemore just did, in fact, raise it himself.
John Littlemore will respond to your comments and from Councillor Springett.
Thank you. I would second that request that we actually lobby government. I don't see why we can't. I'm proud of our service that we have here. I'm bloody proud of it. I've been on this committee a long while, and I know when that gallery is empty, everything's working nicely. When that gallery is full, the trade are coming to us with their concerns, and they've always been very open and very genuine, and I'm hearing what they're saying. I'm just concerned for the safety of all of our passengers, particularly women and girls. Young girls won't care. It's the cheapest option. Off we go. And I'm really, really concerned. It is known that there have been issues. You know, can you really reassure me if there's a problem, you can track the driver down and you know where to find them and who would find them? You know, they've got a car. They'll just drive off. I'm just really concerned. I do think we need to do more, and I think if we're going to not do anything, we need to absolutely double our random checks in the town so that we get known for not being an easy area to work in. So that's 2 comments. Thank you.
Just to pick up that issue about safety, and as you know, as you've commented, is of paramount importance to the officers, and that reflects members as well. Obviously, incidents that do occur, fortunately, are rare, but when they do occur, they are awful. It's terrible offences that are committed. So, yes, we will do our utmost, if they're not somebody who's licensed with us, to find out who that is. And we work very closely with police and other services to be able to do that. But it's almost an argument for saying that we should have these people licensed as operators in the borough. If your concern is that you don't want us running around the country trying to find them, then it's almost a circular argument to say, well, wouldn't they be better off being licensed in Maidstone? So just bear that consideration.
I hear that, so are you going to make them have an office?
Well, it's a requirement of our licensing policy that
I thought it was a requirement in Tunbridge Wells, but we seem
I'm
to...
not, well,
I'm saying you may say yes, but it's not happened elsewhere, so I'm concerned about that.
Sorry, if I could just jump in there. It is a requirement in Tunbridge Wells' policy that they have an office in the borough. And also it might be relevant for members to know that following the Casey report recently, the government have said that they are producing an urgent response in respect of the problem caused by out-of-area taxis. So you would expect, following the government response to that, that there will be something forthcoming from a central government area fairly soon. Well, the Casey report recognised the importance of doing this quite urgently, and this was published, I think, earlier this year, the response.
Councillor Keeley.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things. I was absolutely gobsmacked when I read this pack about what you guys have to do to get your licence, how much it's cost you, and the safety measures that are in place, which are absolutely brilliant. And I think we have to address the fact that it's not fair that other people are coming in from somewhere else and they could be anybody. Now, I've gone in a taxi with people from all the 3 companies that have spoken tonight, always been quite content with that. I get a text telling me who's coming, what the reg is, it's booked ahead of time, there's someone to phone, all of that sort of thing. My daughter had an Uber Eats, although that was different, who then texted her afterwards and asked her if she was single. And I've never, I mean, none of you have ever messaged me and asked me if I'm single, but that is a thing that has happened. And also, I mean, Jason, I do apologise for being on the phone while you were talking. I was checking what you were saying, but I googled Uber Maidstone and it comes up, the on-demand alternative to Maidstone taxis is here. It looks like we're okaying it. And at the very, very, very least, we need to be saying we are not okaying Uber, at the very least. But I think it's something that we need to take forward and consider. Because preventing something happening to anybody is better than afterwards going, okay, whose fault's that? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keeley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So one of my first questions is, have you had incidents, and it seems like, and how did you deal with an Uber driver doing the wrong things in Maidstone? How is that being dealt with?
Uber drivers are very rare in Maidstone. We have the odd occasion when they're here. Personally, when I've been out doing enforcement, they're not the vehicles I find doing naughty things, to be quite honest. You generally have a discussion with them, you explain to them that they're licensed by Uber, we don't have Uber as an operator in Maidstone, they shouldn't be in Maidstone, please vacate the area. And they generally comply. So it's very rare that we see Uber here. Well, me personally anyway.
Thank you very much for your response. Unfortunately, that didn't quite answer my question. Is ever been a Uber driver doing a criminal offence or something that would require their license to be removed? Which I thought there was an incident of somebody raping ladies in Maidstone, and how did that was dealt with?
So, Maidstone can only take enforcement action against licences they have issued themselves. So if a driver or an operator is licensed by another authority, it is up to that authority to take action against that licence. Now, the licensing authorities do work in partnership, as has been mentioned tonight. There's things like the NR3 register, where someone who's had their licence revoked, that would be recorded on there. So there is a lot of information sharing and partnership working that goes on. But with regards to actual enforcement, they have to be licensed by Maidstone for Maidstone to be able to take enforcement action against that licence. Just to pick up on a point that was raised again about an application, any application will be considered on its own merits in respect of the policy that is in place at the time, the law and the guidance. And the report that you're looking at now is asking you to look at specifically at changes to Maidstone's policy.
Okay, John Livermore.
Sorry, Joe, just to pick up on the point that you asked about current practice, there isn't anything we can put into the policy at present that would prevent somebody in Maidstone going on to an Uber app and calling in an Uber driver. So that's not within our gift to be able to do this evening. And that's something that I alluded to in terms of that needs government intervention, which my colleague has already said they are considering. It is unfortunate that government doesn't keep pace with the latest technology, and they're always playing catch up, but that's the situation we're in. With regard to was it a Facebook page, did you say that Uber were advertising as being in Maidstone on? We'll certainly look into that, and we'll speak to them, because at present they haven't made an application to have a premises or a licence in Maidstone.
Councillor Spriggett.
Thank you. Further to Councillor English's proposal, which I seconded, that we lobbied government, would it be worth changing that so we actually write to the bit of government that is undertaking this review, expressing our concerns and what we would like them to specifically look at? So it's just a suggestion, we perhaps, rather than do it government, that we actually write to the person doing the review and say these are the concerns expressed by Maidstone.
There is no such time that is better than writing to a government when they're already in the process of doing a review and adding a little bit of extra weight on the scales. And that would be good timing, I think.
Chair, if it helps, I'm quite happy to give an undertaking to the committee that will do that, so you don't need to propose an amendment.
As we lobbying the government, is there any chance we can kind of guide them in potentially adding to their licensing policy to have if you're living in a certain area, that you're only supposed to be working within a certain kilometers of your place of residence, so that when people are making complaint to licensing committee, the actual person that's been making the complaint can actually attend the hearing at the licensing rather than being all the way in Wolverhampton?
All I would say on that is governments of various colours have not gone down the path of restricting people's employment in that way, so I doubt it would. I think we need to concentrate on the safety aspects that have been raised, and that will have more weight.
And the sorry.
Councillor Keeling. Well, I think we'll listen to.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask a question, Helen, about something you said. I think it was Helen, or it might have been Lorraine, I'm sorry. So if an Uber driver from, say, Medway, which I think is where I know somebody's got one, is over here and they're working, we would then approach Medway Council if there was an issue, but they're not licensed in Medway. So how would there be, they're not licensed, are they?
As far as I'm aware, no.
So how would we take that up with them if there's not licensed?
To the traffic.
Okay.
I mean, the only one I'm aware of currently is, I believe that the Uber drivers in Medway are licensed with London TfL, so you would report them to TfL.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor English, you.
I think the point has just been covered, so it's okay, thank you.
Councillor Nagy.
Yeah, I think everyone's spoken. I thought I'd be last. This committee has got and the taxi drivers, have got a very high standard, and we have had a high standard over the years. And we're not here to affect their business. All we seem to be having is people just want to play level field. They just want to have the same rules that everyone abides. But Uber seem to be one stirring it up here, and I very much agree. I very much agree that when we write to the government, we actually detail what we would like or what we think is a problem, because I'm responsible for girls for safety and women, and I feel that we need to actually say what our concerns are, because if something happens, I want this committee to be on the ball and say, yeah, we said that would happen and you did nothing, especially if someone is hurt. And I think this is what the feeling is of the committee tonight. We're not here to make work for officers or anyone. We're here to make sure that people in Maidstone are safe. And when our taxi, if something was to happen, that then people can look at what this committee did, and we highlighted our concerns, and then send that to government, because if something happens, we brought it up as a committee. And then you hear about people going to Wolverhampton, 50,000 taxi drivers up there. What's going on here? And I think in my time, I've never known it be so confusing. And if something happens, I want this committee to express our concerns to government. So if something does happen in the future, and I think this is what we're talking about, we wrote it and we wrote to the government, and it's up to them then to see what they can do, because if everyone was to write to the government, at least they'll ever know that there is a problem here. And that's what concerns me, because I know I've been here many years, but I'm not an expert on licensing, but safety is always my main concern. And safety tonight, I think, is what we're all talking about. So writing to the government with our detailed concerns, I think, is the number one option, actually. Thank you.
Okay, I think Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. I just thought if the recommendations come directly from an operator, then we should probably include them within them, because they're the experts in what they're doing. So if they're wanting things to be put in place, then the government should see that there is a safety aspect that needs to be respected.
We've listened to the concerns that have been set out by the private hire operators, and we'll make sure that's reflected in what we send.
Could we see a copy of that, please?
Thank you. I thought my voice was loud enough. I've heard no proposals to amend the recommendations of this report, and this report makes the following recommendations to the Licensing Committee. That a further report encompassing the proposed amendments to the taxi policy is not required at this stage, for the reasons set out in paragraphs 4 and 5 of this report. Now, that does not stop us writing to the government or anybody else and making proposals on behalf. Yeah? But we must proceed as to the report. Mr. English, can I have counsel?
I'm sorry, that's not true. We have just Councillor Springett and I have made an amendment to the recommendation which leaves the first part of the recommendation intact, but adds a second clause to the recommendation, but we write, or Mr Littlemore writes to the government review that's taking place, setting out the concerns of this council, incorporating the views of the trade, and that is quite clearly a second recommendation which has been moved and seconded, and I think has broad support in the committee.
Sorry, Councillor English, it was probably my fault. I said I would give you an undertaking to do that, and I thought you were happy for me just to do it as an undertaking rather than it requiring a... That's fine, then.
It's fine. It's not that in any way I don't accept your undertaking. I just think it's important to put on record at a formal committee meeting that we do that, and we support the trade insofar as we can. So hence making it a formal addition to the recommendation.
Is that being noted in the minutes? Yes. It is being noted.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with everything that Councillor English and Councillor Springett are saying. I would go further and propose that whilst we're doing that, we consult further with the good people that have come to us to their concerns, rather than it be with all the will in the world something they've bought and we've listened to in one evening. That it's a piece of work that we do to back up what we're saying to the government.
I see no reason why that can't be included in it. It's relatively simple. I think can I just say that I think the taxi community has been given way more opportunity to express its views than it could have been limited, but it wasn't limited by this committee. And we have heard from 4 different speakers. And so I think we understand fully the concerns of the community, and that will be taken into consideration in any draft letter or letter that goes to government. Is that right, Mr?
I think what I wouldn't want to do is have an extended period of consultation, and then we end up missing the review. So we need to get this in so that we're able to influence it, because there's nothing so useless as submitting comments on a review once it's closed.
Mr. Knightley, sorry.
I was just going to say, yes, do we know could we ask the government when they think their review will be complete? Because as Councillor English has said, it's no good sending something after the event. Thank you.
Okay, but we must agree here. Quick one.
Just something outside of the review, so it might not be something entirely relevant to our committee, but in general as a council. In the same way that we promote things in press releases and on our social media about scams and frauds, can we also start including things that Uber should not be operating here in the same way that an unlicensed cab operates here, to pre-warn people so that they know not to use Uber in this area, because it is essentially a scam or a fraud?
I think that's beyond the...
Sorry, just to come back on that, as my colleagues have said, the law is the law, and out of borough taxis at the moment and the way that they can operate in Maidstone. So we can't sort of tell them that they can't do something that they're legally entitled to do.
I say, but no, you've had your opportunity to speak. Councillors have had to listened without interruption, and we need to make a decision. And there's two things we decide here. One is on the papers that a further report encompassing the proposed amendments to the taxi policy is not required at this stage for the reasons set out in paragraphs 4 and 5 of this report. But it is also agreed that proposals will be put to the government expressing the concerns we have, yes? And looking for further legislation to support the taxi community and the safety of residents, yeah? Now, can we have a vote on this? All those in favour? All those against? Noted. Fine. What's the next item on the agenda?
Consultation response. We do have a speaker on that as well. Yeah, this is from. And we do have
We've done that one.
third party. This is the one. This is the next one.
All right, item 14 on your Hackney Carriage Table of Fares consultation response. Before the report is introduced, we have a third-party public speaker from Maidstone Taxi Association, and they will have 3 minutes to address the committee. Chairman Adam Dyer.
Good evening, councillors. Yes, I received an email from licensing stating the negatives of this tariff increase, which we've all looked and taken into consideration and things like this. But I'd just like to express that our vehicles are very, very expensive. Very expensive, in the excess of £80,000 plus insurance, which is really high, because I found it very difficult to get insurance because it went over the threshold of 60,000, but I managed to find it. And the parts and the labour is all done out of Maidstone. We have to go to Dartford on these LEVC taxis, and it costs a lot of money. So I've taken into consideration of a lot of the public being charged in excess from 320 to 380. I know it sounds a lot, but we haven't had a pay rise for the last 2 to 3 years now. And I was speaking to some of the other drivers who've got the older taxis, and they're worried about, after their 15 years, they've got their upgrade, and that's the only way is to go through that. I know you can buy second-hand ones for like 50, 60,000, but it's still a hell of a lot of money. And so that's about it, really. That's all I've got to say on the matter. So.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. The Hackney Tariff Report is presented following the statutory public consultation on the proposal to vary the Hackney Carriage tariff following the request for the increase from the trade. Members considered the proposal and agreed the consultation at the Licensing Committee meeting of the 11th of September. The consultation would supply feedback on the changes being proposed. The statutory consultation took place between the 2nd and 16th of October, with an advert in the Kent Messenger and the notice displayed at the council offices. In addition to the statutory requirements, the notice was also published on the council's website and social media platforms. As objections have been received, members must consider them when coming to a decision. In total, 3 comments were received during the consultation period, 2 objecting and 1 in support. The full comments are attached as Appendix 3 and addressed at 2.7 of the report. There were no alternative options suggested other than a phased rise, but no outline, and an increase to flag drop only. The flag drop proposal is dealt with at 2.11 of the report and does not provide any significant benefit, so it's not recommended. Members' options are to 1. Agree no changes to the present table, which is attached as Appendix 4. 2. Agree the trade proposal and agree the table of fares at Appendix 1. Or 3. Specify any other amendment you feel needs to be made. The offer's recommendation is that the tariff requested by the trade and consulted on be agreed. The reasons set out at 4.1 of the report. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Dodd.
Thank you, Chairman. I did read the paper, but I missed the fact that there was 2 objections. What was the 2 objections for to the increase in the fare? Was it that the fare wasn't high enough for them, or they objected to? Yeah. Okay, so those objections are not necessary, as they have their own right to actually set the fare. The actual licensing only giving them the maximum bracket that they can put their fare off.
Before we move to a vote then, has any other councillor got any comments? Therefore, are you making an amendment?
Mr. Chair, we just heard from somebody that asked her questions, and Lorraine responded. He hasn't had the opportunity to actually make a second questions from his original questions. And I was wondering, the gentleman in red that came and talked to us.
Sorry, he's had his right to speak and he's made his position clear.
Yeah.
It is for us to decide, yeah?
Yeah.
Based upon what we've heard. And yeah? Councillor English.
Yeah, the council's procedures don't allow a second bite at the cherry in order to answer questions. I mean, it has been discussed in the past whether it should, but currently the Constitution, which I wrote, doesn't allow for that contingency, so we are following the proper procedure. Technically, I suppose it's 1.5 letters of support or emails of support and 1.5 objections, because one of them is split. It's just an observation. So I do believe that on balance we should be supporting the proposal as set out.
Is that seconded? That's seconded. Vote that the report goes forward and is implemented. Those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Abstentions? Thank you. Maidstone Borough Council's Licensing Act 2003, Draft Statement of Licensing Policy 2026 to 2031. This report will be introduced by Lorraine Neal, Senior Licensing Officer.
Members are being asked to agree the Council's draft statement of licensing policy for the 5-year period 7th of January 2026 to the 6th of January 2031, following consideration of the consultation responses received in relation to it. At the Licensing Committee meeting of the 12th of June 25, members agreed the amended draft policy and that an 8-week consultation be carried out on it. The 8-week consultation with stakeholders took place between the 24th of June and the 20th of August and included all licensed premises, residents, associations, responsible authorities, councillors, parish councils and other relevant stakeholders. There was also a consultation carried out through the Council's consultation portal and web pages. That consultation ran between the 26th of June and the 24th of August. There were 5 comments received back from the stakeholders consultation and they are attached as Appendix 2, which also include officers' feedback and comments to consider. The online consultation generated 155 responses, 80 completed and 75 partially completed. In general, the document is attached as Appendix 3 and indicates agreement with the draft policy and doesn't suggest any amendment. Members are asked to consider the consultation responses and to either agree the attached draft revised statement of licence policy with or without amendment, or to agree the attached draft revised statement of licensing policy with or without further amendment resulting from consultation responses, Appendix 2 and Appendix 3. Thank you.
Mr. David Nagy.
Thank you, Chairman. Under our 4 licences objectives, the last one, protection of children from harm, I was wondering if, with the way things are at the moment, that should now include women and girls. I don't know if that's possible, because obviously over the years, women and girls have had a lot of harassment and things that maybe this should cover, and I didn't know if that could be one of our priorities, if that's possible.
Protection of children from harm is actually one of the licensing objectives, and obviously children are under 18, so I don't know if you can include women. Okay.
The licensing objectives are set out in the statute in the Licensing Act 2003, so it's not within the Licensing Committee's ability to change those.
One more. I noticed on page, can't quite see it there, where is it? 56, our partners. I'd like to acknowledge really that what street pastors do for Maidstone. They make us a lot safer. And that is a dedicated team of volunteers. Rather than just being a partner, they actually are out on our streets at weekend. So I just think we should acknowledge as a licensing committee that of good work that they do. And I'm glad it's on that in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On page 56 and 57, there's a number of organisations has been actually highlighted, like the Pub Watch, the Best Bar, the Community Alcohol Partnership. And when I've actually asked 2 officers today, well, actually 3, 3 officers, whether we had any kind of joined up thinking between the licensee pubs and other hospitality trade and the police and the health and safety partnerships, there doesn't seem to be a group as such, despite the fact that they are actually highlighted within our policies. I'm lacking the information on where people can actually go and meet and find out and say, there is a problem with certain numbers of alcoholic, how can we address it? So I wondered, what is your line of thought on making improvement there?
Yeah. Response from John Littlemore, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to give assurance, there are groups, multi-agency groups that include police, our licensing team, our community protection team, and others that meet regularly. There's a town centre team that looks at specifically activity within the town centre. So the situations you describe would be covered by those groups. So members of the public can report via our various portals, particularly to community protection team, but also to the licensing team if they have specific concerns, and they raised and discussed there. I think what we were talking about was there was once a trade and officer meeting that took place that is dysfunctional at the moment. Whether that gets reinvigorated, time will tell. But just to give you comfort that those matters, there is a place for them to reside where we can meet with a whole range of other organisations to address those concerns. Thanks.
Councillor English.
Separately from this committee and this policy document, the Cabinet did hold a discussion about the nighttime economy recently and how we could improve the links, some of which already exist with the nighttime economy going forward. So it's on the agenda for trying to make those arrangements more robust. And as Mr. Littlemore said, the issues of the town centre are in terms of including licensing are regularly discussed at the town centre ward cluster meetings, at the community safety partnership, and at the street scene meeting when they impact on the public realm. So there are a lot of discussion going on. The difficulty is these arrangements do change from time to time, and if we write them into a specific policy document, we would obviously have to change them as the arrangements develop or change. So that would make probably for rather more amendments. And also, we're going to have to go back to item 14 when we finish this because we didn't do something.
Yes, Councillor Dawson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at page 67 on the draft, and there is a note mentioning a young man has been stabbed in a pub, and there is policies regarding detector and handheld metal detector, or even rub-down searching methods. I'm slightly curious about this because this particular young man died a little while ago, but there was younger instances of a member of my church that got stabbed and died. So I wonder, is it just policies that are enforceable, or are they just recommendations? And where are they implemented? Thank you.
If it's a condition on the licence, then yes, it's enforceable.
I see no other member wishing to speak, so can I move forward? This report makes the following recommendations to the committee. To agree to the attached draft revised statement of licensing policy with or without amendments, or to agree the attached draft revised statement of licensing policy with or without further amendments resulting from consultation responses. So I would propose item 1 that we accept. Yeah? Is that seconded? Thank you very much. Seconded. Can we go to a vote, please? Those that are in agreement of the attached draft revised statement of licensing policies without amendment.
I just wanted to point out some things in the statistic of the documents, please. It wasn't a second there.
Excuse me, we've just gone to a vote. You had seconded it. There was... Who proposed it then? Oh, well, thank you very much. Was I called an idiot there? Wouldn't be far from the truth. But maybe take a vote on that. Those who agree, please raise their hands. Those against? Any abstentions? No, I think that's... Thank you very much, councillors.
We have to go back to item 14, and it's my fault because I neglected to check on the detail of the second recommendation, which is actually the date for the tariff to be introduced. It says set a date, and we didn't.
So item 14.
Sorry.
Approve the date by which any tariff shall come into force, which must be no later than 16th of December.
That's not what it says.
It's in the second recommendation.
Well, we agreed to the first recommendation.
Yeah, I moved the first recommendation.
You've moved the first one,
and
that was voted
agreed.
on, that was agreed upon.
But
You
we did
can't
not-
change it now.
No, but we did not vote on the second recommendation, therefore it's still open to be determined. And we have to determine it, otherwise the first recommendation is pointless.
Okay.
So, sorry, this recommendation here.
Well, can I have a proposal to approve a date by which any new tariff shall come into force, which must be no later than the 16th of December 2025? Is that a proposal?
I would, unless there is any reason why not, I think the 16th of December would be an appropriate date, but we have to formally approve that. So I therefore propose that as the date.
Is that seconded by? All those in favour? All those against? All those confused? Sorry.